There was a man, not a beast, not a demon, a man, cloaked in the garb of holiness, wrapped in silence and incense, who drank human blood beneath the chapel floors. Was he a vampire, or was that simply what the villagers told themselves to make sense of the mutilated corpses and the crimson chalices hidden behind stone altars? In the winter of 1387, a monastery nestled in the Carpathian foothills recorded a series of strange disappearances. Novices vanished without a trace. Farmers swore they saw pale figures roaming the forests at dusk. And always, there was that scent, copper and rot, thick in the air like the breath of something buried too long. But why would a man of God commit such unspeakable acts? Why would a servant of light harvest blood like wine? To understand that, we have to look back, not just at the man himself, but at the world that made him. This wasn't an age of reason or mercy. It was a century scarred by plague, torn apart by heresy, and drunk on superstition. A time when the church battled shadows, real or imagined, with fire, steel, and scripture. And in places where the light of Rome dimmed, other forces stirred. In this forgotten monastery, Sanctus Silvanus, they whispered of the Hollow Monk. No one remembered his name, or perhaps no one dared to speak it. He came from the east, it was said, from lands drowned in war and heresy. They claimed he'd arrived during a storm, his robe soaked, his eyes like glass. He brought relics, wounds, and something colder than silence. The abbot, old and blind, welcomed him in, said the monk carried penance, and in those days, penance was a currency more sacred than gold. At first, he said little, prayed often, fasted longer than most men could bear. Some claimed he never ate at all, just watched. Then the dreams began. The novices spoke of pale hands reaching through walls, of chanting in a language older than Latin. One awoke screaming, convinced he'd been buried alive. Another was found shaking by the chapel well, teeth stained red. He had no memory, only the words, "He drinks in place of the Lord." And then they began to disappear. But what you're about to hear is not for the faint of heart. In 1388, as the Black Death waned and Europe limped back into some semblance of life, Sanctus Silvanus quietly rotted from within. The Hollow Monk had taken over the scriptorium. It was his penance, he claimed, to translate forgotten texts from Greek, Coptic, and other older tongues. No one objected. In those days, knowledge was divine, no matter how dark its source. He spent hours among scrolls inked in rust-colored dye. He covered the walls with diagrams, anatomical, astrological, unnatural, symbols not found in any catechism. And still, boys vanished, always the young, always after nightfall. Brother Merrick, a soft-spoken herbalist, grew suspicious. He followed the Hollow Monk one night, through the cloister, into the crypts. What he saw made him tear out his own tongue. They found him the next morning, rocking back and forth beside the altar, his mouth full of black moss. Later, scrawled on a torn page in the apothecary, someone found this: "He does not eat, he drains. The relic is no cross, it feeds." Soon after, the abbot died, suddenly, quietly. His eyes open, his hands folded, his skin gray like old wax. The Hollow Monk led the funeral rites. From then on, the monastery changed. The bell no longer rang at dawn. The prayers shifted in tone, longer, darker, muttered in echo. Blood was offered at the altar, not wine, blood. From chickens at first, then goats, and then one winter night a novice bled out in the snow, eyes wide open toward the chapel roof. The monk said it was an accident, that he fell, but the villagers began to whisper that the mountain took him, that something had awoken beneath the stone. There was talk of fire, of bringing soldiers, but Sanctus Silvanus was sacred ground. Who dares torch a house of God? Instead, they sent a woman, a midwife, a healer. Her name was Katya. She wore a plain cloak and carried salt in her pocket. She entered the monastery alone, on a morning so silent the birds refused to sing. What she found in the scriptorium was not scripture. There were jars, labeled in Latin, but the words twisted. Sanctum cruor, holy blood. Corpus lumen, light of the body. Inside, organs, preserved in wine. Eyes floating in dark syrup. A heart, still faintly beating, wrapped in linen marked with the Benedictine cross. She left that same night, but not before pouring wax into her ears and tearing out a single page from the monk's diary. It read, "He who drinks of man shall not age. He who drinks of the faithful shall speak to the dead." The winter of 1389 was cruel. The snows buried roads, wolves came down from the hills. And then, in a single fortnight, Sanctus Silvanus went silent. No bells, no smoke, no light. When spring finally broke the ice, the bishop of the nearby province sent men to investigate. What they found chilled even the most hardened crusaders. The monastery was still, unburned, untouched, but not empty. In the chapel, every monk sat in perfect rows, silent, unmoving, eyes closed, like statues waiting for judgment. All of them were dead. No wounds, no signs of struggle, just blood, dried, flaked, and pooled beneath their robes. Each one held a cup in their hand, stone goblets, with traces of iron-rich liquid still clinging to the rim. Only one body was missing, the hollow monk. He had vanished completely. No footprints, no records, no trace of life. In the crypt below the chapel, they found a pit, circular, lined with ancient stone. At the bottom, bones, hundreds, some animal, some not. And on the wall, scratched in blood, "He is within us now." They sealed the monastery, placed holy wards at the gates, swore to erase the place from every map, and they almost succeeded. Almost. Centuries later, during renovations of a cathedral in Austria, a mason found a page pressed into the spine of an old psalter. It was a prayer, but not to God. It called upon He who hungers beneath the host, a name lost to time, a name no priest dared speak aloud. Some say the hollow monk was a vampire. Others say he was worse, a man who discovered something older than sin, something that twisted faith into thirst. And maybe he died, entombed in stone and silence. Or maybe he became the bishop.